issues, but it's about bringing in newer perspectives and newer insights to issues that are already being discussed. And I felt, therefore, my anthropological training and my filmmaking was a beautiful amalgamation that way.
Wonderful. And Trevor?
So actually, I'd like to just mention one thing before I speak about my background. I think that what's really amazing about filmmakers in general is just that all of us come from so many different places. And I think that pretty much anywhere that you came from originally is going to inform your ability in making film. Just, as we're hearing these other stories. So I was an archaeologist. Before I was an archaeologist, I was a soldier. When I got out of the military, I made myself a promise that I was never going to go to another place or see another culture and destroy it. I was only going to learn about them. And then I went to school and I studied archaeology and anthropology. And I moved to Finland and I worked at the National Museum as a rescue archaeologist. And while I was taking a break, I worked as a reindeer herder in Lapland on the Norwegian border, and I met a bunch of old veterans who kept talking about a woman who had saved all the villages up there, and I just heard this incredible story, and I drove down south and I bought myself a camera and I shot it, and when I was done, I was like, I like this better than archaeology. And I tell people, because it sounds like it's a really different field, archaeology and filmmaking. But actually, when you do archaeology, you're digging things up and you're telling the story of these artifacts. And then a lot of times you're lucky enough to get the chance to give voice to the dead. And I feel like it prepared me in every way I needed to be prepared to go into filmmaking. And now I make films in a lot of different countries, and I was speaking with you earlier. It's like I'm always, when I make a film in a foreign country, I'm always looking for a thread that shows how different we are, but also how that difference is so readily recognizable, so that we know what it means. I was talking about in Mongolia, when you meet somebody who's younger than you, that you care about, you cup the back of their head and you pull their head in, and you smell the top of their head. And it looks a little odd if you've never seen it before, but there's no mistaking that it's love, and that it's something, it's something deep and meaningful and caring. And these are the things that I look for in a thread in films from other countries, is like, we need to find out those things that separate us visually maybe, but unite us as humans. I think that's how the stories really get powerful and reach people. And that's what I strive to do with my filmmaking with Three Flames Pictures. So.
Thank you, Trevor. Good job. Now, Larry, I wanted to find out now, as a producer and a line producer,
Yep.
Have you dealt with other countries, either in terms of the logistics of shooting there, or making something that would be both for the American market and the foreign market?
Yeah, well, I shot a project in Thailand, and I think it's just respecting the culture, which a lot of us Americans will go to these countries and not respect the culture. And I try to embrace the culture before I go to these countries, just so, whether it's eating their food, hopefully learning their language, understanding, respect, things like that. And I think that helps you move forward. Recently, I shot a project. I actually shot it in Vegas, but it was a Bollywood movie, and it was like an unlimited budget. It was fun, scary and fun. So we walk around Vegas. Let's shoot there. I'm like, well, what's your budget? I said, Larry, can we ask us these questions? So I'll find out how much it costs. They would give me cash. I would go and lock it down. We shot. And the relationship is different from most Americans who were on set. They really didn't respect their culture. I did, which just understanding how people think is, my background in psychology, went to school for psychology. So it's always just understanding people. And I think that helps in businesses, understanding the culture.
It's very interesting that you have gone both to Thailand and then dealt with Bollywood coming to Vegas. So you've seen both sides of the coin. Now, when you went to Thailand, were there any issues or questions regarding the content of the film? Or did they care?
They did care, but once again, I always try to get these questions answered before I go. You know, which one of my good friends, she shoot a bunch of movies out there. So she made sure things were executed and answered before we landed in Thailand.
And you say regarding respecting the culture there, how would some crews and producers not respect the culture? What are some examples?
It might be just they might shoot somewhere and just not clean up. It might be a lady on set and they give her this look of like this disrespectful, you know. And because you know my role is normally producer, line producer, so I'll watch. I'll say, hey, stop that or do that, you know. So I'm normally the big daddy on set. Normally, I'm always that guy, you know. Which I think we're so used to ignoring these things. That's why you have the Me Too movement. You have all these different things that happen. So I try to always get involved in that. So.
It does seem interesting that with the Bollywood group that they just say, oh, I like this. How much is it going to be? And you might be thinking, it's just like, whoa. He's suddenly pointing and saying, do you realize how much this is going to cost or whatever? How does the feel of working with the Bollywood producers versus American producers, did you feel a difference?
Well, one, I was offered a quote unquote, not saying a slave, but a person to stick with me, and I told them no, which I think it was probably kind of difficult. Like, why? I said because I don't want this person. Like he can be my friend, but he's not going to work for me. You know, so I think that initially to just gain respect from the team, because it's obvious this man is not going to accept that. Different from the other American producers, they would accept that offer.
Wow.
Yes. So it's obvious our thought process. Some people can accept this, some people cannot. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Those are two very educational experiences. Dr. Shreen, excuse me, have you had any dealings with dealing with two different markets or two different ways of production?
I wouldn't, in case of my work, use the word market, but I can talk about some places where I have filmed outside of India. The film which 2 years ago won the Cultural Heritage Film Award here at the Universe Multicultural Film, for which I couldn't come and attend because of the pandemic. That film was shot predominantly in India. But as an anthropologist, I study a lot of cultural behaviors of Indians who live abroad as a sort of a diaspora studies. And I've received research grants from the Government of Canada as well as from a trust in the UK. So I have shot some footage and spent time filming in London to understand the changes in cultural practices, the adaptations of the Indian diaspora who have migrated and live in the UK as well as in Canada. So it's, like I said earlier, an extension of my research, but it gives me also a kind of a perspective into how the changes in cultural practices happen when people, it's more about the immigrant culture, once they've left their home country and they've gone to the UK or to Canada. How do they change? What are the adaptations? What are the continuities in their cultural practices? I have done such studies in the US as well, but I haven't filmed in the US, and I'm looking to do that sometime in the near future. So I've contacted a few temples and other associations, and so that is the diasporic culture is something that is of interest and which I have filmed both in the UK and in Canada, to speak of my experience outside of India in filming.
Have you done both documentaries and narrative films?
I have done what my work is on ethnographic films. because of my training in anthropology. Yes, it is documentary films, but it's more ethnographic because the focus is so much on culture. To give an example, if Larry was talking about archaeology, how to understand a dead society or a culture by looking at an old object. I do something called the material anthropology, where, for example, I take a particular artifact which is very much thriving, and I try to understand the links it has to all the people who work around it, the producers of that artifact, the consumers of the artifact, the curators, understand how the artifact moves, and so that is my one area in which I focus when I study the different, or the perspective that I bring to the ethnographic film that I do in by studying an object. I try to understand the culture and the people. And the recent film which I did, which was a documentary slash ethnographic film, was I studied one person's life, an artisan, and by studying the one person, I was able to understand through him what his the context of the culture, the society, the norms, the values, and so many which you get a better understanding by studying at once. So I think my perspective in terms of films is I take an object and I follow it and understand the people around it, and similarly by understanding one person's life, I get a lot of insights into the culture. I get to plug it into a wider context and try to understand other interrelated issues as well.
Now, we've heard the term ethnographic film in a number of different circles. Is there an example that most people know from the mainstream that would be an example of ethnographic film?
I think I could think of something like Gods Must Be Crazy, where there was a section where they focused on the African tribes. Of course, I also don't comply with the notion that when people think of anthropology, they think it's just a study of tribes. It's not so. To me, because there are so many areas in the study of anthropology. You have forensic anthropology, you have sociocultural anthropology, which is where my area of specialization is. And so when I say ethnographic, it can be of different kinds, but I could think of Gods Must Be Crazy, where they studied the African tribes, and the movie of Kevin Costner, where they studied the Native Indians.
Dances with the Wolves?
Right, Dances with the Wolves is something where you study far off cultures, but I think anthropology has evolved much more than studying people who are living in isolation. It's also about one of the recent projects that I worked with, University College London. He's a trained archaeologist from Cambridge, but he is studying today how social media is being used by people, which is so far removed from studying people in isolation, which is traditional anthropology. So I think it's about broadly studying the culture, and it's a broad term. There are so many aspects to culture. I focus a lot on spirituality, the religious practices, and art, culture, and heritage. So those are two examples I could think of from mainstream films.
It's quite amazing how both social media and the internet have affected cultures drastically. It's like suddenly a wedge or a shoehorn suddenly put in and to change the culture. And every time I hear the term ethnographic film, I think of Nanook of the North, but that goes all the way back from 1922. Trevor, I know that you've had a lot of experience dealing with shooting and the logistics of getting into that. In discussing any of the above, can you share with us concerns that have been raised in either the content of the film or the logistics of shooting in another country?
Oh, sure. I think earlier I had spoke a little bit about like we had a film that we shot in Mongolia that managed to get the Green Dragon seal in China, and it's very difficult to do something like that. There's only a few films every year that are allowed to be distributed in China that are not made by Chinese co-production. So I remember when we were going through the process, I didn't think it was possible. There's just so many cultural benchmarks you have to make in China to make sure that it can be seen. And to be honest, it was more of an accident that we managed to hit them. I think it had more to do with the fact that the kind of film that we were making was aimed at an international audience and spent no time blaming or quantifying people's blame. I think that's one of the things. It's like whenever you're trying to make an international film and you're trying to make sure that you can pass the test in multiple countries, you need to make sure that you're making the kind of a film that is talking about the human condition and not talking about other things. You can still get points across, but the moment you become political, you always run into issues that could stop you. As far like we had other films that couldn't make it into China that we tried to get in, and it was because there were issues about stories that covered the basically officials stopping Mongolian language being spoken and things like that, because we had stories about those sorts of things, and that was not going to get into China. And we've learned what we can do and what we can't do. India has its own censorship rules that you have to watch out for. I can say that if you can come up with creative ways to tell your story and figure out what the real reason is why they don't want you to put something in a film, you can. Like we're going to do a Chinese language version of the horror film we made in Mongolia, and like one of the ways that it's about a global conspiracy, but if we tried to just shoot it in China, it wouldn't have worked. They wouldn't have allowed us to do this kind of a story. But we're going to shoot it in the United States, so the Americans are the bad guys. So it's going to be Chinese actors and Chinese director and that kind of stuff, and they're basically like they're medical tourists. So because the thing is, our story, it doesn't detract from our story at all, because our story is about a global conspiracy. So it's like, to us, the bad guys have nothing to do with countries or politics. It has to do with a conspiracy of billionaires across the globe, and so it's like, that's we all know that when people reach a certain level of wealth, you're kind of not really a citizen anymore of where you're from. You're more like you're something different entirely.
Let me interrupt for just a second. I want to ask a couple of quick questions. I'm assuming that you could only do a co-production with China if the film was going to be distributed in China as well as anywhere else, right?
I mean, you could do co-productions with Chinese companies that's not going to be distributed in China.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that. It's just, I mean, in my opinion, the hope would be that if you did a co-production with a production company in China, that you could get it distributed, because it's an amazingly large market,
Right.
and you'd like to see that happen.
Well, let me ask also, let's say that you're not doing a co-production, but you're doing an American production that you'd like to shoot in China. Do you need to get approval from the government script-wise?
Well, so if you're partner with the right production company in China, then they'll be able to take care of that for you. They'll be able to go through the stuff and make sure that it all works. I think that before you decide that you want to do something like that in China, you need to make sure you know exactly why you want to make the movie, because if you have any kind of a reason why you don't want to work with the Chinese government, it's probably smart not to try and do it, because you're gonna butt up against forces that nobody has the ability to stop right now. So I think as a filmmaker, it's incredibly important that you sit down and have a conversation with yourself about, why am I making this film? Why do I want, what do I want to be the content of the film? Because it's like, I think as long as it has nothing to do with politics, then you absolutely can bend in any direction. But if it's about politics, it's suddenly, you know, it's like making films in the U.S. It's like you make a political film and it's, you know, it's from one side or the other, because now we basically just have two parties now, and all they want to do is go to each other's throats. And if you lean in any direction, you know, it's mayhem, and everybody from the other side hates you, like you're not an American,
Right.
you know, and it's like that's one of the things, you know, I'm working towards with filmmaking is it's like, I mean, there's definitely political stuff I don't like, but I'm really tired of listening to people say you're not an American because of what you believe, and I'm just like, you know, this is when did this happen? You know, it's like we need to really move away from that and just start understanding that, you know, what makes us different is beautiful and wonderful, and we can figure out ways to work together. And I feel like it's like that for the rest of the world too. I don't believe, like, if there's a government that you don't agree with, I don't believe that you make things better by directly going against them. I believe that has anyone seen Teenager versus Superpower? It's about the scholarism movement in Hong Kong. I watched that movie, and I literally 3 minutes into the movie I started to weep, and then by the end of the movie I had not stopped crying. And it wasn't because I was angry or upset, it was because I felt like there was hope for the world. Because what I saw was a bunch of young people that did not want to fight the Chinese government. They wanted to work with the Chinese government. It was like a master class in not being what we all are, which is we're all fighting at each other, and we're all pushing each other, and we're all trying to figure out how we prove each other is wrong. And I you know, it was amazing to see teenagers understand that that's just not the way you work with people. You know, I was like, my I'm in my 50s and I'm learning from teenagers. It's like, and I feel like that's where we need to move with everything. Is we need to start figuring out ways to work with each other in an intelligent way, and show each other that we can reach across borders and countries and cultures and languages. I just think and it can be done.
Well, great. Thank you. I'm going to come back to you in just a second because I want to talk about some of the logistics of shooting in other countries. We've been joined by Michael. Michael, welcome.
Hey, how are you guys?
Michael, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you do and have done.
Oh, I'm Michael Baumgarten. I'm an independent filmmaker, writer, producer, director guy, and basically I make movies. And I make movies, and I don't wait till I have millions and millions of dollars for it. If I have enough to make the movie, I generally will make the movie. And there's the point, you know, making the movie now. And it's a lot of fun. And it can be done for not a lot of money. I don't recommend it to do it too many times, but it can be done with a phone just like this gentleman has here. Just like that. It is amazing what can be accomplished in 2024.
Where do you get your financing, or do you need financing at this level?
Well, it is a thing where there's so many people that are asking for so much money that a lot of people approach me because they don't have the budget to even make a drop in the larger budget. So they come to me because I can basically make it to where I can make a movie for 28 grand with post, where somebody else, that there's what they charge for just like their phones and all that kind of stuff for just like the set, because I put it on the screen. I'll take $1, like, let's make a movie. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a shit about the money. I'm concerned with being a filmmaker, telling the stories, getting the stories out. But there is a point where you spend a certain amount of money, then you're gonna have a certain amount of stars. That's just the way it goes.
Now, the films that you have made,
Sure.
How have you gotten distribution on them?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, because if you haven't spent a certain amount of money, because I used to be in just like theatrical distribution, and if you basically didn't spend a certain amount of money, then it's easy to make deals. It's when you've overspent and you're too expensive for what that zip code is, that you're going, okay, we spent 4 million, but no one's going to even give us a deal to actually like recoup it. And now you can't make a deal. So I used to have a job watching 200 orphan films a year because they overspent, didn't have a deal. Now they can't make a deal, or it's a fight, or it's a sale at that point. Like it's like, okay, we spent 4, we can't get that back. Let's take the $250,000 that's being offered. You know, it was really kind of like a wake-up call. And so I was like, when I start producing again, I can't afford to go that their route, because I saw 200 orphan films with executive producers upset because it's like, I thought you said we would make so much money, and then it's like, well, not so much, because this is the market we went for, it didn't work out. Well, should have done that before you made the film and had distribution before you made the film. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes they make the film and then wait. I'm making the films for a cheap enough amount to where I can just throw them up on Tubi. And what's great is they make money. Tubi's fantastic because it completely eliminates the just like the pay wall, where if you put it on iTunes, somebody has to make the choice to actually pay $2.99 to rent it, $7.99, $12.99 to buy it. But the problem with that is you can just go to Netflix and watch as many films as just like you want for virtually the same price. So where's the incentive for them unless they really, really want to see the movie? So what's great about the Tubi and stuff like that is all you gotta do is watch it. And the ads come in. The ads just create the revenue. So they can just watch a lot of movies. And now there's 74 million subscribers to Tubi. It makes it easy. Because now you're not depending on somebody to actually make the choice to put the card down, to actually rent your film. Makes it easier.
Do you have most of your films on Tubi, the ones you've made?
Yeah, in other words, so I have like 4 now, and then I got 3 more that are coming out this year.
How long does it take to shoot one of your films?
I just shot one of them in 3.5 days.
Wow.
Wow.
You're the new Roger Corman.
That there's the king. That there's the king. Well, I designed it to like be shot, in that amount of time, which was helpful. I found 2 actors that were amazing, and it's a film called Kyle's Pocket Dial. So the guy calls the girl, his ex, and there's a call, and she misses the call. She can't stand it. She doesn't know why he called. So she eventually gets around to calling him back, of which he says, oh, that must have been a pocket dial. And for 70 minutes, there's a split screen with the 2 of them on just like the call. And it was just fantastic the way these actors worked. To watch them work in that framework was fun because they got to go and go and go and go. There was one take alone, and I shot it with 4 cameras, 2 cameras on each actor, and then I shot it, there was one take alone for 24 minutes. And it was just stunning, because that was the take where that actress just delivered. And it was like, there was a point where I had to go from split screen to full screen. Because what she gave was now, it's near the end of the call, and it's everything built up of the last 9 months of why he broke up with her. She wanted to know. So she won a Best Actress award at just like a festival because she's totally rocked it. She brought everything to that one long take like it was real. And I was just like, damn, that was impressive.
Well, I'm certain that you would be approached by a lot of producers with 27, 30, or 50 grand in hand and say, hey.
I don't want to do that again.
No, I don't want to do that
wanna
again.
do that again.
You like to do yours.
Yeah, I'm just saying I did. But I just wrapped a movie called American Spark with Schwarzenegger's son,
Right.
Joseph, and it's about Teslas. And he gets to drive one for just like a week because his truck is in the shop. And it's his whole life of what happens next when he goes from truck driving guy to all of a sudden he's in a cool Tesla and all of the cool stuff that he gets to go to because of it. So, and he did great. He's fantastic.
Have you shot in other countries or just all here?
I shot in France.
Oh, how was your experience shooting in France? Any logistical problems?
Yes and no. But what's interesting is we were on the end of a, just like a runway, and we're trying to get this wonderful big plane that's taking off. They wouldn't allow us here in the States to get so close to where the plane's taking off. You know what I mean? So that was impressive, but dangerous. Yeah.
Well, was there a particular reason why you were shooting in France?
Yeah, because it was for June 6th. So we had access to one of the planes that's dropping people off in all of the World War II guard. So we're right there. Somebody's in the plane, somebody's down on the ground. So as they jump out and jump out and jump out, we got somebody there to film it, and then somebody else on just like the ground to catch them as they start to come down off the plane. It was amazing. And that whole weekend there was just stunning of how much the French adored the Americans in a way that was just like, holy shit, I didn't know that they really, to this day, at least they did then, you know what I mean? We're just embracing everybody. It was just like the 4th of July, but they're June 6th, That there was cool.
I'd love to hear someday about your cost-saving measures. It's something that we all need to learn.
Well,
for sure.
I've now bought most of my own gear. My living room's gone, but I bought most of my gear, so that there helps.
That's a tray, isn't it?
Yes,
That makes sense.
but it beats storage, to pay for storage space, but yeah. So there's it. I can basically shoot a movie like tonight. If somebody said, let's make a movie, you know what I mean? And that's what's cool. I don't have to go rent it, don't have to do the insurance or all that kind of stuff to rent it from them, because I own it.
Wow.
Makes it easy.
Trevor, I want to come back regarding your shooting in other countries. Aside from the content, which we discussed previously, what were some of the logistical challenges that you had come across, whether they be technical or otherwise?
Well, I mean, we've had, one time we had a steam train that was supposed to come to us from Kazakhstan and meet us in the Gobi Desert. As one might imagine, the steam train didn't make it. It died on us. So, we were kind of forced with, what are we gonna do? We have only so many days to be in the Gobi, and our director, he's kind of I don't even know how to describe his fame in Mongolia, but he's one of the few nomads who's become a star. So Mongolians kind of, it's not just like he's a star, it's like he's something, like another level.
Bono.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. So he just walked into one of the train stations and asked the guy if he could get on the phone, and he got on the phone, and I don't know what he was. 2 hours later, 3 big Lincolns pulled up, black Lincolns, and it was the guy that owned the railroad. And the two of them talked for a few minutes, and he's like, we're gonna get a train. And then this train pulls in, and it's an electric train.
Oh.
And I'm like, it's supposed to be a train from the 1900s. And I'm like, we're screwed. This isn't gonna help. It's like, how is this gonna work? And so our art director took a look at it, and he's like, I think I can do something. He comes back a couple hours later with a couple trucks, and it's cardboard and PVC pipe. And I'm like, yeah, paint, yes, thank you. Paint, and I'm like, this isn't gonna, and he built a round rib cage out of PVC pipe over the whole vehicle, and then clad it and painted it, and by the time he was done, it looked like a steam train. And
Wow.
and it was done all of those things happened the same day, and we were able to get, because we were going to shoot in the golden hour, we got our shots that day.
That's a save.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean that was. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like you can, many places that you go, you're going to run across sometimes monumental problems, and I think that when you hire the people that you're going to hire, you need to hire people that are very flexible and are willing to come up with options. It's like the people you don't want to work with are the people that are like, we'll never get it done. It's like if you hear stuff like that, those are people you don't want to work with, because it's like, because filmmaking, I mean,
It's a
it's like every day there's 12 or 13 major fires you got to put out, and if the people that you work with are putting them out for you, you're that's God's work. It's like, you know, people are taking care of you, and so like when I work in foreign countries and I know that I'm going to have these kinds of situations happen, I have a tendency to tell people the stuff that has happened to me before. And usually when I do, I'm like, so if you think that you couldn't have done that, I need you to tell me now, not later, because these are the kinds of things that might happen. And I can tell you, I've had very good luck, even with all the bad stuff that has happened. I think I had mentioned earlier that like we lost all of our power when we were shooting in Mongolia, and we actually went to this one farm, and they took an old tractor, took the wheels off of it, welded a cage around it, and turned it into a generator. Even though all of our generators, and like, you know, and then we had to dig a trench and drop, because this thing was so loud. It was a diesel tractor from like 1936 or something like that. So like we had to like drop it into this trench and cover it so that it wasn't so loud, but it worked. And I mean, we've had situations like in Kazakhstan, we've had crazy stuff happen. And again, we worked with Kazakhs that you know, they were like, well, you know, if we need to move the house, we'll jack it up and move it. And they did. And I, you know, I guess what I'm saying is, it's like, I feel like if you're a producer and you produce movies in the United States, you already know the kinds of, you know, crazy stuff that's going to happen. And I feel like you should already know what you need to tell people that you're going to work with. You know, this is what could happen, and I need to know that you're the kind of people that'll work with me and help me get it done. I really rely on my crew. I'm not one of those people that like, I'm just gonna tell everybody what to do and I'm gonna, you know, iron fisted. It's like I let my crew know that, like, you know, you guys, you're gonna make this movie happen just as much as I am. And you know, I think earlier you were talking about not letting people on set do bad stuff. Like that's one of the things that I'm like really, when I'm producing a film, I do not tolerate people treating people like they're lesser, or they're, you know, it's like I don't like to hear people screaming. I don't like to. It's like, you know, if I don't talk like that, none of you should be talking like that. So,
Do you feel that as a general rule, you get more creative problem solving from these crews as opposed to American crews?
I definitely, I do not want to denigrate American crews, because I have crews that I work with that I love. But I definitely feel that when crews are more accustomed to working with less equipment and in much more difficult situations, that they have a tendency to be a lot more creative with how they might fix a problem that you run across. I mean, like I can say, for instance, I've shot in several countries where, in America, when we shoot a film, we shape the light for the shot. And in a lot of countries where they don't have all the lights and everything like that, they figure out when the light is going to be right, and you shoot it at that time. So it's like it becomes more a situation of, does your DP and your gaffer know, you know, what the right time of day is to shoot a certain shot? You know, and then they're just using bounce boards and things like that when you normally would be using all sorts of lights. So I mean, that's another way that you think. I always am amazed. I get places, I see them do something, and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm an idiot. There is a way to do this. So I love that.
Larry, does any of this ring any bells from your experience?
Yeah, somewhat. Like I said, it just, I guess because normally I'm a live producer as well, so it's just, I'm focused on the budget, cutting costs, and being effective, and not tolerating nonsense on set. So my whole thought process is different from that. So, if you need a problem solved in my brain, I don't care if it's from another country or America, handle it, and get it done quickly because time costs money.
Sure.
So it's always my thought process.
Sure. I wanted to throw it out to the group here if you had some questions for our esteemed panel. About anything? Yes, ma'am.
So, hi, my name is Alethea. So I was an international studies bachelor, very closely linked to anthropology, and I was wondering, I saw the importance of, showing documentaries in particular involved with curriculum. So as a filmmaker, is that ever something that crosses your mind to get it into higher education or education in general?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of my recent projects, which I did with University College London, where they were studying how social media and how people use it, very much. I think I screen a lot of my films in higher education, educational institutions. And today I think that grant which was given for generating these films was given by the European Research Association. And I was part of a team where we created about a documentary series with 28 short documentary films, and they were all put up free for students to be used, because I think a lot of universities are now looking at, especially in fields like anthropology, screening films is now considered to be quite an important component of NIFL. So very much. So we have. A lot of my films have been screened in the States, in Harvard, in Rice, and in Canada as well, in University of Ottawa and in University College London. I think films are going to be a very important part, and I think for me it was one of the first experiences where earlier the research grants used to be used just for interviewing people and for publishing books. But interestingly, a part of the research grant was set aside for making films, which is something which is a newer trend that has started to happen. And yes, it's going to be increasingly a very integral part of higher education.
Great. Anything else? Any additional questions?
And these films, Dr. Shin, would be also not only documentaries, right? I would say that it would be narrative.
Well, when it comes to screening films in higher educational institutions, especially if they're based on research, it's pretty much on truth and reality. And so it's not just about documentary films, but it's more about having different, like I said, a complete category of films or a different genre called the ethnographic films. Because if it depends on the culture and the society related films where they study the behavior, human behavior, or it could be relating to the social values, the cultural norms. There are different genres, but I think ethnographic films is an interesting genre by a way you learn about a particular society or a culture.
Yes, sir.
Question. So, as an actor myself, one thing I love doing is a script analysis and a character analysis of what's going on in the script. You guys have a very interesting background between all of you. How much time, what is your process talking with actors to help get your vision across, to help the actor be more in tune with your vision?
Who would like to take that?
Yes. Well, they say that 90% of a director's job is casting, right? So if I've done a good job on that, at that point there, what's not on the page, we can have chats and everything else. But it's all about, at that point, adjustments. Because the actors, if I've chosen them correctly, are gonna bring something that's really special. And while there's certain things on just like the page that they gotta stick to, of course, I find that there's some actors that they just bring magic if you let them. So I want to see what they might bring in the rehearsals. And I've sometimes, you know, used some of what they brought from that and then said, hey, let's use that in like the actual script. Because it's magic. Actors are brilliant. And sometimes if they have to do it, you know, exactly word to word for word for word, the performance gets a little, you know, contained. So you gotta trust them. See what they have. And if it's totally not what you want, then you can just kind of like do adjustments to rein them back in. But I'm about making a good movie for performance and everything else. And boy, you know, there's so many of just like my films where we barely had rehearsal time, but they won acting awards. So it kind of works. You know what I mean? I just kind of trust them and then just nudge them. But I don't like go, you know, I don't get too strong in it in terms of a vision with the movies I've made so far. Now, some of them may require a little more, but in the ones I've made so far, they've been pretty light with some drama. Is that fair?
Yeah. Larry, you had an observation.
Yeah, so recently I shot a Western. It was based on the Rufus Buck story. And the writer wrote The Night of the Living Dead. So he's like super successful screenplay writer. And I was, you know, it touched on racism. So you had the director who was, you know, American, you know, older. You had me. So his perspective on the story is different from me. Like I put a lot of pressure on the actors to give a great performance. It wasn't just, oh, you know, here's your script, read it. I said, guys, this represents me, so you gonna kick ass. If you don't kick ass, you gonna keep shooting. Even if the director says cut, you gonna keep shooting. Here's the script. I gave probably 2 months of you know, having the script. And we had, you know, just, you know, like we would go to lunch together, I pay for it, and just sit with the actors and just learn the script. I think sometimes actors don't have time, you know, and you give them pressure to understand your lines, do a great performance, and then hopefully sell the movie. Because my focus is always making money. So if it's a shitty movie, there's a high chance it's not gonna sell. And then you're gonna blame the director, you know, because I probably would blame myself, so I'll say, oh, the director sucks. Or the actor, she sucks. But really, I suck because I gave no one time to bring their A game. So I think giving people time, actors need time, you know, and also I think we also need prep time. The actual art director need prep time to have some props, awesome wardrobe. I mean, all the things which is not difficult to understand. Just give an actor time and make them understand why they're there. It's not just to get paid your SAG rate and you leave. It's I want you to be a kick-ass actor and win the award, which makes me look good. That's really what it is.
Excellent attitude. Additional questions? Yes, ma'am.
To our anthropologist and archaeologist, Dr. Sheen and Dr. Trevor, if you had to make a movie and you had all of the resources in the world and all of the best leaders in the world and you can make your favorite movie, what movie would that be? What would be your movie about?
Okay. I'm gonna have to ask a qualifier for that. Like, when you say favorite movie, do you mean like the favorite place that we want to shoot, or the favorite kind of story, or do you mean?
All of it, all of the above.
You know, there is a story that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I've never even taken a stab at it because I know the amount of money it would cost to do it. But Alexander Pushkin's like Russia's most famous poet, but basically the people that came before him, his great great grandfather was an African, and he was taken and given as a gift to I'm trying to remember what the term, but basically given as a gift to the head of the Turkish Empire, and he ended up as a boy living in this court, and he was a natural linguist, and he learned a bunch of different languages and ended up working as a spy for the vizier, and they sent a Russian ambassador to Turkey, and he learned to speak Russian in like, I don't know, something insane like a month. And the ambassador watched him and realized this kid is telling the vizier what I'm talking about, and he didn't speak Russian. So he went, basically this guy went to the vizier and said, if you really want to impress the Russian leader, what you do is you send the boy. And so he was traded again, and he was sent to Russia. Yeah, trafficked, exactly. He was sent to Russia, and when he was met by the Tsar was like, I've never seen anybody who could learn this many languages, and instead of using him in court, he put him in military school, and this guy became one of the most famous generals in Russian history. And if you look at paintings of him, he's white. He's not. It's like they basically completely hidden the fact. And his son also became a super famous general. There's just generations of military leaders, and Pushkin himself, they expected him to become a great military leader, but instead he was a poet, much to their chagrin. And I think they didn't really understand that he was going to become the most important poet in their history. But yeah, if I could pick a story that would make me the most happy, I would like to make that either a trilogy of films, or maybe even better, a series, like multiple seasons. Yeah, Netflix. But I mean, there's no way I could do that. I can't really write the script small and do it for $1 million or 500,000. It's just not gonna. That's a massive but that would be my dream. So.
I want to modify that question and ask Dr. Shreen. This comes to the question of why you are making films. Let me ask, what is it that you want the world to understand from the films that you are making? What is your central philosophy that you want everybody to grasp through these films?
Yeah, I think she asked a very interesting question, which was if you had all the resources available. I very strongly believe in you don't need a lot of money to tell a great story. Solid writing and a very interesting story is what you need to make a great film. So to me, the most I want to tell stories where I recently met a person who I think if I'm doing a film about him would be great here for the Multicultural Film Festival, because he's lived in India, he's lived in Canada, he's lived in Africa, he's truly multicultural. He is about going to be 80 or 75. He's just an ordinary person who pursues a spiritual life. And I spent a lot of time with him, and I thought, this man is incredible. So I want to tell the stories of ordinary people, and it's not just a story of people, but it's about a soul's journey. So a journey of not just a person, but of a soul. And to me, how I see it is, there are 7 billion people in this world, which means there are 7 billion stories that can be said. When I was talking with this person, I was just completely inspired by him. He lives a very ordinary life. So I want to tell the stories of ordinary people, and after all, the study of anthropology and culture is about studying ordinary and trying to find the extraordinary in the ordinary lives of these people. That's really what I'm looking for, and the film which I did, which won the Cultural Heritage Film Award in Universe Multicultural Film 2 years ago, was done on a budget of about £6,500, and it's about 45 minutes. And though it's an ethnographic film / documentary film, I produced original music score for the entire film. And one way to cut costs, I feel, is to have people who are really committed. I agree with what he said, that it's about making the films, it's about telling the story. You have a yearning to tell this particular story, not to just make money. And so I think that having dedicated people who are as invested in telling the story and who love filmmaking is what will really cut costs. And you need to do a lot of homework. I rented for a post-production suite for about £8 an hour. So I used to spend a lot of time, when you take suites, I try to cut costs wherever possible, because somewhere I feel that the money that is spent, today they do big budget films in India as well. And I know the entire production costs of films in India, I read in one of the research studies, equals the production cost of just one film in Hollywood, Pirates of the Caribbean. So the production cost of one film, Pirates of the Caribbean, is the entire cost for the movie production industry in India itself. That is the ratio. But sitting in India, I still see so many people making big budget films, and the song which won the Oscar, the music video, the RRR, I looked at that, the film. He's a director who works on big budgets. But to me, I always felt that it's not the visual effects. It's not yes, you need good cinematography and a good music, but it's not really the visual effects that ultimately touches a person at the end of the movie. You need to touch his heart. The emotion quotient is what is most important, whether it's a documentary film or whether it's fiction or non-fiction. So I think I want to move people with my stories and touch their hearts.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can you name a film that was in the mainstream that really had made you feel the way that you want to make people feel? A normal person who is extraordinary in their own way?
I'd have to say Gandhi.
Gandhi?
Yeah, though
Okay.
he was a political freedom fighter, I think he was very simplistic in his living, and he's not a normal person, but his approach to big problems were through very simple solutions. And so I think that was a very inspiring film. I thought the director, it was really inspiring the way he took the Indian character and projected it into something that was absolutely, that was mind-blowing film. It was really,
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. We are on the end of our time, so I want to first of all thank everybody for participating. Thank you very much. And I know the crew here likes to get pictures of everybody, so if everybody would